Good morning. I'm Jim Csek. You're watching Kelowna Now, and I'm here with Ian Burns, our managing editor, all the way in from Ottawa. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, mate.
There you go. Our first story. Can the loonie dip below 70 cents? Experts seem to think so. And we've been talking about this for a while, that with our current policies and our anti-energy policies, I believe that we may be headed below the 70-cent mark, and some people say as low as 60. So
That would be devastating, wouldn't it?
will not be good for Canadians, especially for our vast amount of imported goods, including fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, quite good for exporters, but that wouldn't cancel it out, really, would it?
Well, not really if you're buying groceries, right? Like you don't get a lot of the benefit from the exporters, right? If somebody's selling something in the US, like oil and gas, which is good for them, but not great because they're paying for their wages in Canadian dollars, but they're getting paid in US dollars. But again, most people don't get that benefit. They're just buying groceries at the grocery store, right?
Yeah. I mean, the extent to which we are wedded to the US in all ways, really, but economically, it does make us very, very vulnerable, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then Trudeau's Santa Claus plans. Um, there's economists that think that will add to inflation and slow down the Bank of Canada rate cuts. So I just think, while the rest of the world plays chess, I'm not sure if there's a game called marbles or something that they're playing, that they seem to have lost most of the marbles as well.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people are not, a lot of experts or economists are not very impressed by this, are they? But what they all seem to have in common is they all seem to think that the checks are going to be the bigger deal than the GST thing, even though the GST thing is kind of that's the headline, isn't it? That's the thing that catches people's eyes. But
Yeah.
$250 to most people,
Yeah.
that's a bigger deal, isn't it?
We're going to talk about this a little bit later too, so we won't waste all of our time right there because we're going to come back to it. Half a dozen tourists die in Laos after suspected methanol poisoning that they're drinking like bootleg booze. Um,
Yeah, I've actually been there. I've been to that town many moons ago. I wouldn't recommend it, really. It's just like it's not a very pleasant place, in my opinion. But when I was there, it was the big danger was people were jumping into the water and they were dying because they would bang their heads on rocks and things. And now apparently it's all about moonshine. But they're quite sketchy places, these towns in Southeast Asia, so and elsewhere in the world. So I would urge caution if anybody's thinking of going on some backpacking holiday around there.
I've got some thoughts on alcohol in general, but I won't share them here. So, you know. Um,
Yeah, well, this is dodgy alcohol, but yeah.
yeah. MP says Canada completely played for suckers after forestry firm buys Asian conglomerate. Imagine that, right?
Yeah, this
Again,
is this is really interesting to read, actually. Is the idea that the guy he bought two big Canadian forestry companies, some of which operate in Kamloops, actually, and in BC. Um, and then that made him the largest private owner of forestry in Canada. And he was supposed to not be connected to this Asia Pulp and Paper Company, which has a dubious reputation, let's say, or it has a reputation for clear cuts and things like that.
yeah.
And then, sure enough, apparently the guy's now going to buy that company, so they are going to be together after all.
Again, our Canadian government is playing marbles while the rest of the world plays chess.
There's definitely nationalism, or whatever you want to call it, a softer word than nationalism, if you prefer. That's definitely in vogue right now, isn't it? And Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are still banging the drum for a kind of internationalism, kind of globalization that's really out of
Well,
fashion
he
now.
definitely
So
doesn't.
yeah,
He doesn't seem to have his policies that really put the interests of Canadian first. So, good news in a local front. Big White opens today, and you can get up there. Look at that! Look at that snow! Just incredible. You can get up there and half price for lift tickets, rentals, lessons, everything 50% off. 104 centimeters of an alpine snow base. That's a big base for this early in the year.
Yeah, they've been blessed. And it was actually predicted by, I think it's a weather network, predicted that accurately, something to do with El Nino or whatever. But yeah, very, very good. And it isn't
Make
just
it
Big White, there's a few others.
opening up a couple of weeks early, and or a week early, and that makes up for last year when they had to open 2 weeks late.
Yeah, Mother Nature repairs everything.
There you go. Um, and lots of snow on the highways too, on the passes, the mountain passes. So before you head out, Drive BC, very good resource to take a look at before you head out. That's these photos. That one there, Elkhart. Um, that's the connector on your way to Merritt. It does not look good. So if you don't have to drive, maybe avoid driving. Right.
Highway 3 as well. That's another one. There's a warning out about that one.
Yeah. So again, winter tire is a must for those roads, and then slowing down, and again, driving in the daylight. All those things, or trying to avoid going would probably be the best bet, right? If you can.
Yeah.
Amazon cargo jet removed after sliding off the runway. Prime Air.
I think that's the most interesting part of this story. Not that a plane went off the runway, but that Amazon Prime has its own fleet of aircraft. I find that
Yeah. Well, they
quite
move a lot of
interesting.
cargo.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, when you see it, it makes sense. There's no reason they shouldn't, but it's just kind of funny to see an Amazon Prime plane, I think,
Which,
to me
which,
anyway.
which leads into the next story. Canada Post reports a $315 million quarterly loss as that strike enters the second week. You can put that postage stamp picture back up there. Um, and that's worse than their lost third quarter last year. A year early, they lost 290 million. So this thing just gets worse and worse and worse, right? And they say it's an
Yeah.
increasingly crowded and highly competitive e-commerce delivery market. They're losing most of their parcel stuff. Packages dropped by 6 million, or nearly 10% year over year. They're having a tougher and tougher time. And then obviously you've been talking with the union and the leadership team over at Canada Post.
Yeah, I mean, it seems quite evident, doesn't it? It seems quite transparent that they just don't have the revenues. They don't have the money to meet the demands of their workforce, and their workforce is not happy about that, so they can't do anything. So they're just stuck now in a kind of stalemate.
And they likely don't have that jet that Prime Air has there, 767 cargo jet. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that's not the only jet that Prime is flying, or Amazon.
Yeah, it does look bleak, doesn't it, that they can lose this much money and then simultaneously have workers demanding like massive financial commitments.
Well, if
I
you
mean,
look at
it's kind of in a pickle.
when you fly into most airports now, across the runway from where like the terminals are for people, you're going to see lineups of like FedEx jets and all that kind of stuff on the other side of that, right? And out of the airport, there's a huge UPS and FedEx depot out there too, right? So tougher and tougher for Canada Post to deliver, especially when people aren't doing a lot of the regular mail, and then even a lot of the bills that used to get delivered by regular mail are now all kind of like e bills and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder if it's going to end up being privatized or just wound down at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a Canadian institution, right? But like maybe it needs to find a way to compete as well.
Totally. Well, in
Without
Britain, my abandoned homeland there, they had Royal Mail, which I think was created, I mean, centuries and centuries ago, like possibly predates Henry VIII. Like I can't remember exactly when, and they privatized that. And to be honest, that didn't really work. It still suffers. So I don't know. I don't really know what the solution would be because I'm not convinced that privatization is the solution.
Yeah. Uh, your voice. People can send in your voice. We got a letter in from a lady there. Um, they had a couple of axe marks in their Ford pickup there. Like somebody was trying to get a look at it. The Ford pickup withstood it looks like 3 blows by an axe trying to get into that pickup. So she had some questions there for our Mayor Tom Dias.
Yeah, a very upset resident, and anybody that's lived in Kelowna or had business with Kelowna knows that it's what she expresses in there is very common. You hear it all the time, don't you? To be honest.
Yeah, so we use this as a bit of a ask. If you have concerns or whatever, you can definitely write a letter to the editor, and Ian is the person that usually goes through them and then posts them, and then they end up on our X platform. And there's Kelowna Now on X as well. We're verified on X, so we use X, and you can follow us on X all the time, and you can send us your letters and your concerns. And then we were back to our friend Justin there, with acting like Santa Claus. Basically the promise was that starting December 14th, Liberals are pausing GST and HST to make groceries and kids' clothing and other stuff tax free. Well, most groceries were tax free, right? So it's kind of a bit of a gaslighting there. It's the snacky foods that weren't GST free, right? So.
Well,
And then the food professor, who's got a very big account there, he's saying literally that it'll amount to about a savings of $4.51 in groceries and about $20 in the restaurants, right? But
unless you go to a restaurant every day, I guess.
yeah, and then of course all the Liberal MPs are jumping all over it, and they're putting out their how they get on the train there, and everybody's putting out all these ads basically promoting it. If you really want to help Canadians, remove the carbon tax. That's what Canadians have been asking for over and over and over again. So this is just another distraction from not addressing the real issue.
Well, that's what the Conservatives have said, as you might imagine, but that is also the position now we know of a lot of other people, including the NDP, kind of sort of have that position, don't they?
Well, our own David Eby said he would remove
Eby.
it, right? If Pierre removes it. So that is the thing that's driving inflation and costs for everybody. So doing this little, again, trickery thing by saying, hey, you get a tax break for 2 months to kind of distract people from, the real issues that people want addressed is, again, just disingenuous. And, what's that word? Gaslighting?
Justin's sending you a few texts there, isn't he? He's not happy about it. Not happy about
somebody
your
is. There you go. So maybe there you go.
Maybe we'll chat to Justin. Maybe he'll give us that interview.
Well, we should ask, right? And just say like, why? The Boring Company. Just a couple of things that are kind of interesting out there on the internet. There's this big rock digger. I don't know if you've ever seen the Boring Company, but this is basically their Proof Rock, whatever they call it, 3 will launch directly into the ground. And it's just basically like a mole, and it just goes in there and digs. And then there's another picture there of a cyber beast in one of the test tunnels, because they're digging a tunnel right now in Giga, Texas, to go from one part of the factory to the other factory. And then you can see what the tunnels look like when they're done in the next image there. And then we have a little video to play. I was in Vegas last year at the CES, and I actually rode on this one, and it's pretty cool. Actually, you go underneath, you get around pretty quick there. I think we're going to see if we can play it here. No, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to play it, but the cool image there for you, just to show you, like, there's some really cool images out there. 33 Raptor images. See if we can get that in. There you go. Look at that. That's the bottom of the SpaceX Starbase off the booster pad there, right? 33 Raptor engines. Pretty cool.
Looks pretty cool, doesn't it?
It is pretty cool. And then I guess they're showing some real improvements in Argentina ever since, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this guy's name right. Javier? Is it Javier?
Yeah, that's how you'd pronounce it in a sort of North American accent, yeah. Or Javier.
There you go. I mean, he's showing that they're showing some real improvement there, and Elon Musk is putting it out there. Deregulation and reducing government spending leads to prosperity. That's what we should be doing here in Canada, not doing a 2-month GST holiday on snack foods, right? Because that's what it really amounts to, right?
Millet is the geezer that campaigned for the presidency with a chainsaw, and
that's right.
He wanted to cut.
He's definitely a character for sure, right?
Yeah, he's completely bananas, as as we discussed yesterday. He's mad, but he's kind of Argentina is a huge basket case of a country, and it has been for a very long time. And the government spending is just crazy there, but their
Yeah.
fundamentals are really quite strong. They have lots of natural resources, they have quite highly educated population, and I guess if these stats are borne out and they come true, then he's shown that Argentina has a lot of potential.
Yeah. Whereas in Canada, look at, like this is what you're going to get the GST removed from. Just I'm going to give a quick little list here: alcoholic beverages, carbonated beverages, candies. That includes chewing gum and chocolate, fruits, chips, crisps, puffs, curls, sticks, cheese puffs, potato sticks, bacon crisps, granola products, ice lollies, juice bars, ice waters, ice cream, ice milk, sherbet, frozen yogurt, fruit bars, roll-ups, cakes, muffins, pies, pastries, tarts, cookies, donuts, brownies, croissants. Oh my. Puddings. Yeah. All the good stuff. All
Robert
the stuff that you should
Robert
eat.
Kennedy won't be happy, will he?
All the stuff you should eat in large quantities as yeah, that's the joke. You shouldn't eat those in large. And hey, and then for kids you get some jigsaw puzzles. There you go. And video game controllers. So get your bag of cheese puffs or whatever. Remember that you get a big jar of cheese puffs too, right? Or cheese balls. And just
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Sit there and watch reruns of what was that show? That Al Bundy show. I can't remember what it is, but
Oh, isn't it called Married with Kids or something, or
hey, as
something
a Married
married
with Children. There you go.
married
Married
with
with
Children, that's
Kids.
it. Yeah.
Both of us know exactly. Yeah. And then in the United States, Matt Gaetz pulled himself, likely because he had to, from the Attorney General position, and then they named Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General for the state of Florida. And I listened to a few of the MSNBC commentators saying that they're terrified of her because you're going to love this because she's competent, right? What? I'm just like, here's a powerful female. She's competent, and that drives them crazy.
Yeah, well, it's harder for them to bemoan the white male thing when it's a woman, which the Democrats have been known to do from time to time.
And then our meme of the day, this woman posted that says she was promised misogyny by the left, and we're getting all these female appointments.
Yeah, that's kind of dried up a bit, hasn't it? That line of attack on Trump, I've noticed.
Well, I mean, there's some pretty powerful women being appointed, right? Including the first ever chief of staff, Susie Wiles.
Yeah, that astonishes me, that
And I
fact. I'm
and
quite
I
surprised by that.
and I don't know how many female attorney generals have ever been for the United States, but I don't think very many.
And yeah, I'm thinking also like Homeland Security. I
Yeah,
can't think of one off the top of my head.
yeah. Well, and so you got Tulsi Gabbard, you got Christy Newham, you got Susie Wiles, and you got Pam Bondi now. And then I can't remember the name of the McMahon lady. I can't remember her. She's head of education, right? You know,
Yeah, she's
uh,
gonna
um,
wrestle with them.
and plus, like they can probably do a little skit during, at some points, where they all get together and what do they body slam each other or something like that.
I hope so.
And Dana White's come out today and he said he's done with ever since, like he worked hard to get Trump elected, and he said he's done with politics right now. So there you go.
Joe Rogan doesn't seem to be. He seems to
Oh.
be getting quite active on X, and he's becoming a little bit more political, which is quite
Well,
interesting.
the View went after him, saying that Joe Rogan is not to be believed because he's a dragon believer, and so that's what he changed his Twitter handle to Dragon Believer.
Yeah, well, he's said some pretty silly things over his years in on that podcast, but that doesn't change the fact that he's very, very popular and influential, that's the important thing, isn't it? Unlike The View, which is not either of those things.
Yeah, it sounds like like a lot of those shows are going to have a tough time as MSNBC or the NBC sheds itself of MSNBC. And then the same thing goes for ABC News. Sounds like they might be trying to shed themselves of The View as well.
Well, I feel like to an extent those shows and even networks as well, to an extent, they kind of represent a defunct set of ideas now.
Yeah.
I feel like that this election feels like quite a major moment, doesn't it, in the West and in America? It feels like it represents the end of that kind of post-Cold War liberalism
Well,
of the last 30 years.
MSNBC lost half their audience, right? I mean, the vitriol that they put out there during the election was hard to come back from. Right now, you're telling more than half of the United States that they're, whatever names they came up with, right? So,
Well, it's even obviously the view is stupid, really, isn't it? I mean, I don't think not many people take the view seriously because it is absolutely absurd. But then the more serious versions of that kind of those sets of ideas, like like CNN or what have you, like they're all recording declines, aren't they? It's the whole thing is declining. People are less interested, I think, in that sort of like set of politics.
the only cable news network that's seen an increase in their viewership during this election was Fox News, and they were killing it. Every other network was just like CNN is. I think they're announcing even more layoffs today. So, um,
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been good for a while, has it? They did have a bump during the initial Trump years, didn't they? But it feels
yeah,
like they're not going to get that again. Well, the New York Times, they do quite well, don't they, with
yeah.
subscriptions? So maybe
But
they're
it
the happy
sounds
story.
it sounds like like I don't know if he's like downplaying himself or whatever, but he's definitely not as flamboyant or outspoken. Donald Trump, I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he seems to have really changed because he was so kind of bullish and aggressive and like cheeky, wasn't he? He would always attack people.
Yeah, like even uh, Joe and Mika from MSNBC, the Morning Joe, asked for a meeting, and he said sure. So
But yeah, I mean, it's certainly in his style. Or he just kind of sits there with a bit of a frown now, doesn't he? And he just kind of like it
mhm.
talks more about policy and things like that. There's definitely been a change. And to go back to England again, something quite similar happened with Boris Johnson, who was quite flamboyant and silly when he was before he became prime minister. Then when he became prime minister, he tried to put the serious face on. So I don't know,
Mm,
but that doesn't quite work, that analogy, because Trump in his first presidency, when he was elected, he was still like that, wasn't he?
yeah,
He was still a bit of a wild card, but I don't know. Maybe he's matured.
gold in the financial markets. Gold. You can see where the Trump election where gold fell off. The U.S. dollar still very very strong. The U.S. dollar very strong, but gold still seen as an asset that when people are there's enough geopolitical concerns out there for gold to continue to its move higher. And then Bitcoin, you and I have been talking about Bitcoin quite a bit, and we were saying that Bitcoin would likely reach 100,000 by the end of the month, and then we were like midweek here. We said, well, jokingly, it's probably going to reach that before the end of the week. And here we are near the end of the week, and it's banging on the door, right? Um, well, right now, 99,282. It might just do it today. 99,282.
So Bitcoin now, looking at that chart, it also dropped a little with the election of Trump.
I know it's
What was
gone
the
straight
reason
up
for
since
that?
the election.
So when it goes down, that's the lead up to the election, then that drop,
Yeah,
and
that's
then up
correct. Yeah. So
since,
the
right?
election night, Bitcoin. That's when I knew the election was for Trump. That Bitcoin called it. You could see the jump, right, and then the jump, and then continuing to move higher. Like you know what I mean? Like I said, um, right on that chart, which we took a few minutes ago, like probably 30 minutes ago, 98,564. Currently, right now, 99,265.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like such a big deal now, isn't it? I feel like governments in the West should start talking about it a bit more because it seems like there hasn't really been very much said, but it's huge, isn't it, at the minute?
Yeah, there's a lot of people. The Trump administration sounds very favorable, and that was one of the detractors for Bitcoin was that it was the biggest enemy of Bitcoin was perhaps regulation coming to get at it, right? To kind of stop it, cancel it, or whatever else, outlaw it, all those kind of things. Like, China's had some pretty tough regulations on it. So, and the Biden administration, I think they were trying to talk favorable to it, but they sure never acted favorable to it during the whole time, other than that Sam Bankman-Fried fiasco, right?
Yeah. Well, it's legal tender in some places, isn't it? Like El Salvador, I believe, is one of the first ones.
Yeah, one of the few countries. There's a couple of small countries that are, but we could talk a long time about Bitcoin and that, but it is definitely getting some favor. But the other big thing is the stock markets themselves. Since the Trump election, have reacted so favorably. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that there is a lot of faith in the stock market right now, talking about deregulation and allowing, the Canadian, or not Canadian, American businesses to thrive. And America is kind of like a hotbed for tech companies, right? NVIDIA had huge earnings again yesterday, so.
Yeah, they were very pleased with themselves, weren't they? It was massive.
Well, I mean, look at their sales numbers. Yeah, and Tesla having another big day today. So I don't know. The stock market definitely really liking the new administration. Less regulation for sure, right? Because it seemed like a lot of businesses are being choked off in the United States with more regulation, more, a new department, and then, a lot of these things that all these regulations are spawning. The auto industry in the United States has got to be breathing a sigh of relief with the EV mandates gone. Not so much in Europe though, right? They're still pushing ahead. So, and in Canada, likely won't see any changes. I think Stephen Jabot said he's very disappointed with what went on at the G20. For him, he would rather everybody
that's what Trudeau said. Yeah.
Everybody like live in a paper bag or something like that, and don't go anywhere while the elites travel the world in jets, right?
Well, that's certainly how it is received by a big chunk of the population, and that, I think the people that put these ideas forward have to take blame for that, because I don't think that they've done it in a particularly astute way. They've not made it appeal to people, really.
Well, I think it's December 14th. You can rush right out to your closest Walmart, buy 6-7 huge containers of cheese balls and your favorite beverages, and save all the tax on that, and then you can just sit there and not worry about anything else, like paying your rent or your buying groceries, because you have all the cheese puffs or cheese balls you need.
It's going to be a big deal for cheese ball fans.
Yeah, cheese balls. They're got to be good for you too, right? So there you go. Traffic report. Look at that. Traffic flowing east and west, and we got that snow bathtub ring there in Kelowna, about halfway up there. So our snow meter, right? So the snow's about halfway up. So if you live up in the mountain areas, you got some snow. If you're down here on the valley floor, not so much yet. So with that said, and without delay, we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence.